We're here to talk about Silicon Valley real estate market analytics of July 13th. Sorry I didn't update this slide. We'll go into the details later. I'm Richard Calhoun with Creekside Realty. If you want the details of this, look for how to participate live. This is a summary slide. We're looking at the inventory for the past 14 weeks. It's a quarter plus both bookends. At the beginning, a quarter ago, 14 weeks ago, we were 77% of the inventory you'd expect. Now we're at 84. So we're still a shortage of inventory, but we've improved a little bit. And what you're seeing is the other lines. The purple line is the current data line. The gray line is where you'd expect inventory to be. There's a shortage of inventory. The red line is the least amount of inventory you'd expect. You can see there's a shortage of inventory, and the blue is the most inventory. The blue and the red, the blue favors the buyer, the red favors the seller. In the case of inventory, more inventory favors the buyer, and that's why the top line's blue. And the very next graph we're going to look at real quick is offers accepted. And the blue and red are reversed because a lot of offers favors the sellers, few offers favors the buyer. Blue is buyer, ice cold marketplace, better to negotiate. Red is red hot sellers marketplace, hard to negotiate. With offers, we were at 69%, and now we're at almost 81%. So the inventory has gone up some, but the offers has gone up more. Also noteworthy is offers are still essentially right at or maybe slightly below the least number of offers you'd expect. So there's a lot less offers than you expect, where inventory is closer to the normal range. And you can see that because this is 80% and this is 84%. You can also see it because this is below the blue line and the inventory is sandwiched between the gray and the red lines. Moving on to days on unsold inventory, this is the balance between sellers and buyers, supply-demand balance. And here a low number is good, so 9.6%, almost 10% above where you'd expect DUI to be is a slower marketplace, and therefore it's between the gray line and the blue line. And now we're at 110.5%. Well, we've gone up 1%. Again, you're between the gray and the blue, and now you're at 39 days. So the market has slowed 8 days, which is pretty significantly to slow that amount, but it normally slows that amount, so the percentage is almost unchanged. Now moving on to days on market. On this one, I look at the 75th percentile, and fairly shortly I'll be introducing a new metric. I'm still finalizing it. But for now, we're looking at what the time it takes 3 out of 4 sellers to sell their property. And back here 14 weeks ago, it was 14 days, exactly 2 weeks. And that was 80%. So it was faster than normal, 20% faster than normal. So you were below the gray line, approaching the red line. Now you're much closer to the gray line, but you're still on the red line side of it, and you're at 97%. So you're almost normal marketing time. 100% would be absolutely normal marketing time, and that's 18 days. Still a quick market, and a normal marketplace is a quick marketplace, and that's just the way Silicon Valley is. There's simply not enough housing for the demand, and therefore even in a slower or a worse market, it's still a fast moving marketplace. You go to most areas in the country and to be telling people you're selling out 3/4 of your inventory in 2.5 weeks, they would be looking at you with, you don't know what you're talking about, eyes. Moving down to ask price reductions. So this is a measure between sellers' expectations and the market reality. And what happens here is this number tends to be really low when the market's going up, because sellers are looking for history of what the market's done. And if the market's peaked and coming back down like it seasonally does, and it appears to be doing this year, as one would expect, sellers' expectations are higher, and so more price reductions. And you can see that because up here, the gray line was a pretty low number, and here the gray lines increased quite a bit. But if you look at percentage, you're only, it's basically unchanged. But now sellers on average are taking almost a full percent, 98% of 1%, just shy of 1% price reduction, where just 14 weeks ago, they were only taking 1/4 of 1%. The amount of reduction is increasing, but the amount compared to where they would expect it to be is almost the same. And you can see that it's basically been following the gray line. Real estate is very seasonal, and you have to compare to seasonal. A lot of the people who look at markets compared to last month, that's irrelevant in my book. Now, if you compare to a year ago, that's okay, but now you're only comparing 1 year. These gray lines, the red lines and the blue lines are based on the median of the past 10 years, not the current year. So I go back 1 year and then 10 years worth of data. So from 10 years ago to last year, 10 years worth of data. That's the current year is year 0. And then I look at the median. So that gives you a long-term recent history of what the valley has done. And then finally, overbids. This is not a leading indicator, but it's up here because it says high interest for consumers. And it's the offer competitiveness. It's how much buyers feel they need to compete. And you can see the Earth 14 weeks ago, you were halfway between the gray and the red line. And now you're basically right at the gray line, much closer to the gray line. But the red line has come down fairly significantly in basically the last 3 weeks. We started off at a 9% overbid, and now we're down to 7%. But this is basically 0.5% more than normal. So normal at this time of the year is only 6.7%. Normal back here would have been 6.2% overbid back here. The amount of overbidding now is actually, the red line is the most you'd expect in overbidding, and we're normally at 70%. You're 0.4% below that. So you're basically at 6.8%. So you're a little bit above the gray line. Here you were quite a bit above the gray line. Now what we're doing is looking at all of Silicon Valley like we were in the other slides, but we're looking at it over a period of time, and we're going back to 2014. On my longer slides, on January 1st, 2023, I changed from this condensed horizontal spacing with each dark vertical line to be a year to this more expanded spacing where each vertical line is still a year, but it's much further out. And that's so you can see these fine adjustments within the last year. I do 1 full year, 2023, so you can see the annual cycle and then the current year in the expanded mode. Starting off with the purple line, which is inventory, you can see we had a huge drop in inventory for 4th of July. We had a little bit of recovery this last week. I would expect a bigger recovery this week. And then after that, we'll see what happens. Your offers accepted are down, the orange line, and that tends to lag the inventory a little bit. And that's because there was no new listings, basically. You saw the big drop in inventory last week. So there was less new stuff for the buyers that are actively looking in the market to buy. Now there's been the influx of new inventory, as you see by the purple line. So I'd expect the orange line to go up some next week. Now your DUI increase, which is a slowing marketplace, it's saying that the inventory is up and the demand is down, and therefore your DUI is up. That will likely also change next week. Here now is looking at days on market, and days on market is a metric I'm currently working on a lot offline because to me, it's a very telling indicator of what's going on with the marketplace. The reason I will say it's telling is if all of a sudden homes are selling more rapidly, the days on market are going to decrease. And if they're taking longer to sell, that's a slowing marketplace. So the purple dotted dash line is where we are right now. The blue dotted dash line is where we're going to start off with, and it was where we were a year ago. The market a year ago was hotter than it is now because your hot market is down here with the red dotted line, your cold market's up here with the blue dotted line, and you move up and down on a axis sort of like this double arrow pointed here. We'll step through and we're going to start about a month at a time, which is either 4 or 5 weeks. You can see the dates up here. I try to keep the date roughly the same. And then we're going to start at 13 weeks, which is 3 months. We're going to flip over every week. You can see the boulder line right in the middle of the pack here is the week being highlighted. That's 6 weeks ago, and that was sort of the slowest of the market. Then you had the spring run up, and right about there is the peak of the marketplace, and maybe right there, the 26th of April. And now you're sort of at the plateau. But now with the first solid line right there, there's a fairly significant slowdown. Look at that jump down, that jump, and it's a jump up, which is a slowing down of the marketplace. Jump up, and just even last week, there was a significant change. You can see that the market has slowed quite a bit, and it's slower than it was last year. It's taking more time. More sellers are taking longer. Basically, I have been using the 75th percentile mark here, and I don't think it's high enough. I was actually starting to try to figure out if I wanted to use 80, 85, 87 and a half, 82 and a half to have more movement. But I've come up with a different metric that's even better than that, and I'll hold off on introducing it until I'm ready. And that's probably going to be a couple weeks out still. But basically, you can see the market's been taking longer and longer for the sellers to sell, which is clearly a slowing marketplace. But it typically does that at this time of the year, so don't be alarmed. Now we're looking at the ask price reductions. This is the same concept as the last group of slides, and this is the seller's expectations compared to market reality. Here, the purple line again is the current data. The blue line, dash dotted line, is where we're going to start off, and that's a year ago. So the market is cooler than it was a year ago. In other words, sellers are doing more price reductions than they were a year ago. And so now we're going to start off at jumping at a week, and you can see them moving. It's basically cooling down. And right about there is the coolest of the marketplace. And now the spring run up. And now we're going to flip from monthly to weekly, so the jumps aren't as much. That was probably the peak. And now you're slowing down a little bit. So sellers are increasing their ask price reductions. And now as we get into solid lines, the most recent lines, you can see they're continuing to come down. And, it's not a huge amount, but now notice that, I don't know if you noticed that, but basically a week ago, right there, 2 weeks ago was better than, or now this last week was better than 2 weeks ago. This current week is the worst week. So current week, 1 week ago was better, 2 weeks ago then was worse, but better than we are now. And then after that, it was all better. So just a little fluctuation. That's the holiday. Holidays have a huge impact on real estate. Basically, real estate is a time-consuming optional event. If you have social obligations, family obligations, travel obligations, that takes priority typically over your real estate transaction. And sellers realize this, so sellers don't want to go on a holiday weekend because they're going to have less traffic. So there's a huge impact. And the market's driven by what happens on the weekends, what houses are open houses, what houses are new on the marketplace, which is why my whole data set is based on weeks and not months. And now looking at the overbid, and this is actually a fairly significantly lagging indicator. And the reason it's a lagging indicator is we have to wait for escrows to close. If we went back to the policies we had back in the mid-80s, we released the sale price while an escrow was pending and had no problem doing that. That changed basically in the 91 timeframe. So now you have to wait the 3 to 6 weeks for escrows to close to find out if the buyer's overbid it or not. But again, we have the same concept where the purple line is the current year, the blue dotted dashed line is a year ago, which is what we're going to start off with. But now there's a reversal. The purple line is slightly above the blue line. So the market is actually hotter, but that's saying the market was hotter 3 to 6 weeks ago than it was a year ago, or the buyers are feeling willing to overbid more. And I actually believe it's the latter. And the reason I say that is every time the market gets an insult, hit with some negative news, buyers recoil and are more conservative with their amount of overbidding. So a year ago, buyers had it in their fresh in their rear view mirror was the 2022 price adjustment that we had. And so therefore they were willing to overbid, but they were stingier on the amount of their overbidding. Now that's gone. And so they're willing to bid up over. So although the number's higher, I would actually say this is indicative of worsening market conditions. Because if the market conditions were the same or better, I would say that this separation would be more. Now, there's no way to prove that. It's totally subjective. It's just what I believe looking and working with the data. Stepping through, there's 11 months ago, 10 months ago, 9 months ago. So no real, now at 8 months ago, you're going down. There's coming way down significantly. There's sort of the bottom of the marketplace. There's sort of the plateau. Now the huge run up. Now you're almost at the peak. Somewhere around there is the peak. Now the peak, we had a long plateau on the sale price overbidding, and that's because it's spread. But fairly soon now, right there, you start seeing decreases. They're not huge. That's the first big one. That's another big one. Basically, about 4 weeks ago, we started to see significant reductions in the amount of overbidding. Again, the market's hotter than it was a year ago, but I think it's still indicative of a cooling marketplace. And the reason I believe this metric is higher is because we're further away from the 2022 price corrections. Now what we're going to do is look at each metric and we're going to compare it to its pattern. So again, just like on the first slides, the blue line represents the most inventory that you would expect. The red line is the least inventory you'd expect, and the gray line is exactly the inventory you would expect to have. Now, we commented about the holidays having a negative impact on real estate, and I would actually even say that the July 4th holiday had a bigger impact on real estate this year than it normally does. And I base that on, look at the difference from here, the peak, the recent peak just before the 4th to the valley, and compare that to where the normal is. And even in a hot marketplace, the magnitude isn't as much. Why do I think that happened? Well, July 4th is essentially in the middle of the week because you want to be at your destination by Thursday, so you're going to be traveling on Wednesday. So by taking 2 more days off, you got the whole extra weekend off. And so I think for a lot of people, not everybody, but for a lot of people, or at least some people, the 4th of July became a whole week off vacation. And also, I believe it was also enhanced by COVID. People are still recovering from their shelter in place, not being able to travel. We're starting to have normal travel and we're making up for lost travel. So the holidays right now are having a more significant impact than they normally do. But you now came back up a little bit. I expect another increase next week. But again, you're between a normal marketplace and a hot marketplace. The big takeaways is we had the extremely limited inventory during first quarter, and basically second quarter was this growth pattern where we really pulled away from the red line, the lack of inventory. We didn't reach normal levels of inventory, but we're a lot closer to normal levels of inventory. And now what the future holds, who knows? But my normal projections would be you would follow the path of the gray line. So you're not going to jump up here and follow the path. You would start here, come up, and you can see the peak is probably in another week or two. Then you start your basically decrease. Initially, you have a little bit of a down and then recovery, and then you can just have the end of the year fall off. So you can see basically starting our 4th quarter, October 1st, it starts off pretty mild. This is basically the month of October, but once you get into November, it just drops off like a lead balloon. That means buyers would have less inventory to pick from. If you're a picky buyer, you probably want to buy before Halloween. If you're a buyer that's not picky and you want to maximize your return, you probably want to wait till just before the end of the year. Here is your inventory compared to the 10-year median. And what we're doing now is just taking that gray line and straightening it out so you can see your pattern for normal. You can see that earlier this year, we were having a lack of inventory right around 75% of the inventory you'd expect, maybe. And then you got all the way up to maybe around 90%. And now you're basically down around 85% of the inventory you'd expect. This is the same pattern for offers accepted, but you can see the offers accepted are right on the blue line. So that's sort of the least you'd expect. Yes, you do have less because the least you'd expect is the 10 percentile. And the red is the 90 percentile, and this is the typical or the median. Yes, you can go below the blue line, but right now we're right at the blue line, just slightly above the blue line. So we're having the least amount of number of offers you'd expect. My offers are offers accepted, not pending. For a lot of people, pending transactions are any transaction that's still in escrow and has nothing to do with sale date. I was just reading a newsletter the other day from another person, and they actually call it pended. And their pended transactions, which I hadn't heard by anybody else, so it may be unique to them, was like my definition, offers accepted. But it could be different in what we determine to be offers accepted. Do they count contingent offers? Do they count contingent offers as still inventory? So there's a lot of decisions that go into this. My goal is to have something that reflects the market and fairly smooth data that changes with the market trends. And I would actually throw out there that my market trends are smoother than most that are based on monthly data. And that's just because on monthly data, you have partial weeks. What days of the week have 5, what have 4, all impact the data. You don't want that in your data stream. Offers are still lacking. They're coming down, but they normally come down. Then they start recovering. Basically, middle of July, they go up, and then they come down for the end of the year. Here's pulling out the gray line. You can see we dipped compared to normal. And that's, I think, just a fluctuation. I wouldn't be surprised at all if next week we were up here at about 78% again. We'll find out. Here's days of unsold inventory. This is the speed of the marketplace. You can see the huge impact, and now you can see you're back up. You're between the gray line and the blue line, so you're above normal, a little bit slower than normal. And that, again, the colored lines are based on the 10-year median. Here now is the gray line, and so you can see that you're 10% above where you'd normally be. And normal is a fast-paced market in Silicon Valley, so still fast, but a little bit slower. Here's your 75th percentile today's on marketplace. One of the reasons I don't like it is the step function, and the data that I'll be introducing shortly in several weeks will get rid of the step function, but you can see we went from close to the red line to basically very close to the gray, if not on top of the gray line. You went from basically on the red line to very close to the gray line. You can see we are still a little bit below the gray line. This is just pulling the gray line out and then showing the percentage of the typical market or the percentage of the gray line. Here you'd have been a slower marketplace than typical. Here you're a faster marketplace than typical. Here's the seller price reduction. Right here, your zero line, that would be no price reduction. So you can see on average at small periods of time, sellers have actually raised their price. Typically, it's a small price reduction. The reason it's a small number is most sellers do their homework, and therefore very few percent of the sellers reduce their asking price. It's typically around 8 to 15, 5 to 20% of the sellers are doing price reductions. So it's a small number of them. And you can see right now you're below the gray line. It's the vertical separation. So you have to go straight up. So maybe somewhere around there. But now the blue line is going to be way down here somewhere like that. So it's actually quite a ways away from where the blue line is. Here's the compared to the normal. So now we've stretched out the gray line. And here the hot marketplace comes below the zero line, because some sellers adjust their price even in a hot marketplace. What I'm trying to convey in this map is a small amount of price reduction, somewhere around 1/4%, maybe 0.5% price reduction is still a hot marketplace. But we're down here, we're over 1%. I would say that's a cool marketplace. I'll probably end up adjusting these slightly, but anything over 1%, I would still feel comfortable saying is in a slower marketplace or a market price where sellers' expectations exceed the market realities. Here's the frequency. So you can see right now we're at 15% of the sellers are doing their price reduction. That's a little bit more than normal. Normal's down here around 13.5%. It's almost 10% more sellers reducing their price than normal. Here you pull it out so you can see that we're basically 10% more. It looks like it's closer to 11, maybe 12% more sellers are reducing their price than typical. Here's the average overbid. And again, now this is a lagging indicator. It's telling you what happened in the marketplace. So you can see we were quite a bit above the gray line, but now we're getting pretty close to the gray line, but the gray line starts falling off. So it's going to be interesting to see how quickly the purple starts following this gray line. But I would say that the amount of overbidding is going to trail off now to the end of the year would be my expectations based on what it's done over the past 10 years. Here's the same thing. You can see that we were above average. Now we're coming down and we're rapidly approaching average. And this is overbidding again. This is the frequency of overbidding. How common is overbidding? So here's 70%. This would be 72%. So you're right at 72%. Again, getting pretty close to typical, but typical is a little bit lower. So a little bit more overbidding than you typically would expect. And here you are just barely over the gray line. That's indicating you're having about 1.5%, maybe 1.25% more overbidding than you typically do. Here's your long-term pricing. The blue slope line is sort of the long-term appreciation line. One of the things that you can really see in this graph is this V at the end of the year, and you also tend to have some sort of a rollover arch and the high price. So we've rolled over and now our prices are going back down. And I would expect them to go below the blue line later this year. So this shows the heavy cycle even on pricing that we see every year in Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, it's Santa Clara County, Alameda County, and San Mateo County, single family and duet homes only, no townhouses or condos. Here's an estimated payments, assuming 80% loan, Fannie Mae 30-year fixed rate for the national average. This would be the cheapest home coming in here at about $7,000 a month payments. The typical home in Silicon Valley is about $13,000. And if the person buying the most expensive 90% home did an 80% loan, which would be pretty unusual, their payment would be about $26,250 a month. Here's the active listings for the 3 counties individually. So now we were looking at all 3 counties in a blender. This is the first effort of breaking it down. And then the last effort is micro markets. I actually believe micro markets are where you should spend your time on. Most people are interested in an overview. Santa Clara County is in the blue. It's got about 850 listings right now in the marketplace. Gray is Alameda County. It's got the most, as it typically does, as you can see back here before the pandemic. And San Mateo County has the least because it's the smallest area. I would say that San Mateo County appears to be the most normal compared to where it typically is. if you came and found the second quarter line, of each of these years, you might be up here. And so you're down a little bit, but that's only about 50 listings. Where if you look at Santa Clara County, it may be at 830 listings right now, and normally it's going to be at some number up here. Yes, 2017 was a down year, but some number normally around 17. Things have really changed with the pandemic, and we're not back to normal levels since the pandemic. Alameda County is similar, but has more inventory than Santa Clara County and closer to its normal. Offers accepted, and this is really telling. Even though Santa Clara had significantly less inventory than Alameda in the previous slide, here the offers accepted are slightly higher. So Santa Clara County has a much faster paced market than its neighbor to the east and north, the Alameda County. And the offers accepted is San Mateo County, and at somewhere under 400, it's slower than it typically is. So San Mateo County is going to be a slower marketplace than typical. And here you're going to see Santa Clara is the fastest. San Mateo County is slower than where it typically is, but faster than Alameda County. So Alameda County is the slowest pace. And that's going to be a little unusual because I think we're going to see overbidding in Alameda County is pretty strong. Here's your time on the market. Santa Clara County is the fastest at about 21 days. Alameda County and San Mateo County are pretty close together. If I was to guess, I would say that Alameda County is 25 days and San Mateo County is 26 days. List price reductions. So who's taking the most price reductions? San Mateo County is doing the most price reductions, followed by Alameda County. This isn't surprising in this order, really, on the price reductions. So the frequency of price reductions, Alameda County is doing more price reductions than San Mateo. And again, Santa Clara County is doing the least amount of price reductions. Here's your overbids. Here's where I was talking about. Alameda County, even though it had the most price reductions, has the most overbidding. It's slower than Santa Clara County, but Santa Clara County got less overbidding. Santa Clara and San Mateo County have roughly the same overbidding, which seems strange. So Santa Clara has stronger market conditions, but less overbidding. This is one of the reasons why you want to look at a lot of different metrics and measures of the marketplace, because you'll see things like this that logically don't make sense, but it's what's out there in the marketplace. Alameda County, slower marketplace, more price reductions, but buyers are going in and overbidding at a higher rate. They're bidding 8% over asking price, where Santa Clara and San Mateo County are about 6.25% over the asking price. Frequency of overbidding, Santa Clara County is the most frequent overbidding. So they're overbidding the most often in Santa Clara County, but they're overbidding less. And they're overbidding in Alameda County a little bit less, and the least amount of overbidding at about 65% in San Mateo County. Here's your long-term appreciation. You can see Santa Clara County really has come away on the top on this one with the most appreciation. And this goes back to the last 9 months of 2015. San Mateo County and Alameda County are right together, and they've been together now for close to a full year, not quite. And it would be third quarter through second quarter of this year. Here's your pricing. You can see that San Mateo County has the highest pricing, but you'll also notice that it's below where it was earlier this year, but also below where it was in 2022, as well as hitting where it was in 2021. If you look at Santa Clara County, yes, it's below where it was just earlier in second quarter, but it basically just touches, yes, it's a little bit below, but it basically touches where it was in 2022, but way above where it was in 2021. Alameda County is below where it was during second quarter, below where it was in 2022, and basically, like Santa Clara, equal to where it was in 2021, but Santa Clara was equal in 2022 and way above in 2021. Clearly, each market does a different, or each county does different, which is why it's important to look at it. Sale price. Here you can see that Santa Clara County is basically in second place. San Mateo County is the most expensive, and Alameda County is expensive. That's the same as this graph. This is on log paper. This is on regular paper. I prefer log. A lot of people prefer regular. Here's your estimated payments for the three counties. So Alameda County is the most affordable, followed by Santa Clara County with payments at about $15,000, and San Mateo County the most expensive with payments about $15,750 a month. Here's the summary of the micro markets that we're going to be going into. We have each one of the metrics. These don't by themselves tell you what the market's doing. These highlighted yellow are the leading indicators. These are lagging indicators. And this is just a FYI information. Here's the 20 micro markets, starting off in Santa Clara County, then San Mateo County, and finishing up in Alameda County. Here's your inventory. Right off the bat, you can see the areas either white in color, mostly in Alameda County, or red in color. So basically either normal or lacking inventory. The only area that's blue in color is the San Mateo County coast, and it's a fairly faint blue. So basically a lack of inventory or normal inventory. Offers. Clearly the offer map is bluer than the inventory map is red. So you basically have a lack of offers. The only area is sort of normal is right around Palo Alto, Cupertino, Sunnyvale, Mountain View area. Most of the other areas are blue in color. East San Jose, Central San Jose, and South San Jose is also fairly white in color. Here's the days unsold inventory. So look how blue San Mateo County is becoming. So that's a slower than normal marketplace, slower than the past 10 years. So are sort of the affordable areas in Santa Clara County. The areas that are sort of normal are Alameda County and sort of the heart of Silicon Valley. Definitely a change over the last couple of weeks on the speed of the marketplace. Here's your days of unsold inventory now. So even though we're at normal is a hot marketplace, which is why when we come to this slide, you're seeing a lot of red. You're seeing a little bit of blue here in the expensive areas of San Mateo County at 91.5 days, as well as along the coast at 87 days or 86 days. Here's your 75th percentile time on the marketplace. So this is 3/4 of your sellers are selling pretty fast. You got a little bit of a slow area or normal area here in the central part of San Jose, Santa Clara, Campbell, Cambrian, Willow Glen area, as well as Palo Alto, as well as up here in the North San Mateo County area. Here's ask price adjustments. Again, fairly typical for most of the areas. A little bit of red, which means sellers are doing less price reductions, sort of in the Tri-City area of our Alameda County, which would be Fremont, Union City, Newark, Pleasant way up here in Livermore, would be more of a balanced marketplace. Here's your ask price adjustments, the frequency. So less common in most areas. Saratoga, Los Gatos is sort of more common than you'd expect, and so is the San Mateo County coast, and so is Livermore. So people are starting to do price adjustments. Here's the magnitude of overbidding. So you can see the average overbidding is pretty extensive. The one area in the San Mateo County coast is doing a 2.5% price reduction. But I mean, you go up to Berkeley, they're still at 19% over. Oakland's 10% over, 10% over in Cupertino. So it's still a lot of overbidding going on, which is why it's red in color. Here's your frequency of overbidding. So how common is overbidding? It's basically around 2/3 to 3/4 in most of the areas. Here's the long-term appreciation. So the outlying, more affordable areas have had the most appreciation since the pandemic. The closer in areas, for the most part, have had the least appreciation. Morgan Hill, South County is sort of an exception to that because that's sort of an outlying, more affordable area, but it's had less appreciation. Here's the sold price, and instead of following just the median price in the middle, I also follow the 10 percentile and the 90 percentile, so you sandwich the price. Noteworthy is Redwood City now is significantly cheaper than Cupertino and Sunnyvale, which is why it's redder in color. That is not historically the spread of pricing, but it's where we've been for the last little bit. This is showing we only sold 2,100 homes this year, just slightly above the 2050. We're only, what, 30 above? So there's a very good chance that the current year will drop down to become 9. That happened up here. Just if you go back and look, June 21st was the third 8 year. Now it's 9 because escrows fall apart. In recent weeks, escrows fall, and that decreases the number of offers accepted because it's no longer accepted. Here's the actual raw numbers. Look at the drop of the new listings. So we're starting to get into that summer mode of less and less new listings. Inventory actually went up. Offers went down. DUI went up by quite a bit, but that's again the effect of the holiday, not shifts in the marketplace. If I was seeing these 5.5 days and we didn't have a holiday to explain it, I'd be a lot more concerned and watching it a lot more carefully. With that, we've made it through Silicon Valley real estate market analytics for July 13th. I did update this one and offline, and then I'll be posting it the Greater Bay Area, which is 5 regions, 13 counties. The blue is the YouTube archive of my channels, so you can go back and look at any ones you want. I leave them up there. The green is what I call my root URL. That's how you get to the archive if you want less typing than the blue. If you add in 2024 to the end of that, you get to the live presentation. Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. The handout is posted. If you add in H 2024-07-13, you'll get the handout of about 67 point, the power slides. It's not all of them. I go through 133 slides, I think it is. The ones that are more or less redundant, I don't put in the PDF. In any particular episode you do that, I'm Richard Calhoun with Creekside Realty, working with buyers or sellers here in Silicon Valley. My contact information, happy to work with anybody. Please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing my YouTube video with others. And I'll pause for a second to see if anyone's got any questions. Not seeing any questions, let's proceed with the Greater Bay Area. So the Greater Bay Area is made up of 5 regions. The first region is Santa Clara County that we have been talking about so far. The second region is San Francisco and Marin. I often refer that to the cities. Then you have North Bay with Sonoma, Napa, Solano, and Contra Costa. The Central Valley, San Joaquin and Sacramento counties, and Central Coast being Monterey and Santa Cruz. So here are the 5 regions. Santa Cruz and Monterey, the Central Coast, and the cities are much smaller in size population. So they have less housing units, and therefore their inventory is lower than the other 3. You can see Silicon Valley is typically in the middle, and Central Valley and North Bay has the most. Right now, and since the pandemic where everything changed, now North Bay has the most, but it's down fairly significantly. It's only at about 3,000 listings, where normally it would be up around 5,000 listings. So that's a shortage of 2,000 listings. Central Valley is even shorter because it's typically historically been in the same region as the North Bay. And now instead of being at 3,000 listings, it's only at 2,600 listings. And then Silicon Valley is normally significantly lower, and it's still at 2,500. What that's saying is Silicon Valley has a shortage of inventory that we've been discussing earlier, but the shortage of inventory in the Central Valley and the North Bay is even greater than the shortage within Silicon Valley. Santa Cruz, Monterey, and the cities have a shortage too, but there's much lower magnitude. But on a percentage basis, they may be the same. For example, the cities is currently at about 500 listings, and maybe historically it might be about 800, so that it's missing about 3/8 of what it is. So it's not as much as the Central Valley. And then the cities has a little bit more inventory normally, and it's got more inventory now, so it's got about the same ratio probably. Here's looking at the offers. So Silicon Valley has the most offers, and typically it's got the most, but only by a little bit. But now it's outperforming both the North Bay and the Central Valley as far as the number of offers. But along with the inventory being down on the previous slide, offers are down, which keep the market somewhat in balance. And now what you're going to do is look at the Greater Bay Area supply and demand balance, which I measure in days unsold inventory. And you can see Silicon Valley has been by itself until very recently. Look at the cities just plummeting down. Let's go back and look at why the days unsold inventory dropped in the cities. You can see you've had a slow general climb in number of offers. That would tend to make it lower. And then you've had this dip in inventory. So it's probably more the dip in inventory, but combined with a little bit of an increase in the sales, that's caused this huge cliff fall off on the days unsold inventory. That's basically saying the market's really accelerating. It's getting more aggressive. The slowest marketplace is the Central Coast, and then you have the North Bay and the Central Valley sort of in between. Silicon Valley is typically in the bottom rung, and it's still in the bottom rung. What's interesting is the cities is sort of close to the middle of the pack, but at the bottom of the middle of the pack. And now it's really pulled away. And the opposite, Santa Cruz, Monterey, is normally in the middle of the pack, and now it's gone to the top. So there's more separation of what's in the normal, with Silicon Valley performing pretty much where it normally is. Yes, in 2021 and early 2022, it was a faster paced market, but 40 days is a reasonable number for Silicon Valley. Time on the market for 3/4 of the sellers. Silicon Valley is by far the least, with only about 18 days. Then you have the other 4 regions very close together, between 30 and 37 days to sell 3/4 of your property. But that's still 3 out of 4 sellers selling their home in less than a month, and that's pretty impressive. Here's the seller ask price reductions. Silicon Valley is taking the least, but right there is Central Valley, followed by the North Bay. Then the cities is taking almost the most, and the absolute most is the Central Coast. And look at the increase in all 5 regions. So all 5 regions is sellers are taking larger price reductions. Frequency of price reductions, that has been increasing in all 5 regions. It's still not very common. Here's 30%, so basically 28%, which is pretty close to 1 in 4 sellers are doing a price reduction. In Silicon Valley, it's closer to 1 in 7 doing a price reduction. Here's the overbidding. So this is what the buyers are overbidding. Notice that it's going down in all 5 regions. The only region that's below 100% is the Central Coast. Central Valley is pretty close. I think one of the reasons the Central Valley is so limited in the overbidding is people often are going there for affordability. And if you're worried about your budget, the one thing you don't want to do is go in and pay 103% over asking price. You're willing to pay more than asking price, but you're going to try to get it for 101%. And so there's a more downward pressure or more pressure to keep the magnitude of overbidding down. The North Bay and the 2 runaways are the Silicon Valley and the cities. Silicon Valley at about 7% overbidding and the cities at almost 8% overbidding. This is the frequency of overbidding. Overbidding is most common in Silicon Valley, followed by the cities. And notice the difference. So Silicon Valley is 72%, and you come down to the Central Coast and it's about 39%. Not quite half, but approaching half the amount of people are overbidding. But again, notice the decrease in all these regions. So the market is clearly cooling. And again, overbidding is a lagging indicator. This is what the market did 3 to 6 weeks ago. Here's long-term appreciation. The cities has really fallen off on the bottom with the least amount of appreciation. Silicon Valley has got the most appreciation, followed closely by the Central Valley and the Central Coast. And North Bay is between the top performing group and the underperforming cities. And it's a fairly significant difference. The cities only has 44% appreciation, where you go to Silicon Valley and it's 94% appreciation, so more than doubled. Here's the long-term sold prices for you, and this is on regular paper for you. You can see prices in Silicon Valley and the cities has rolled over. It's rolled over in the Central Coast. It's rolled over in the North Bay, and the Central Valley is basically plugging along flat. Central Valley has a much more stable price profile than, say, Silicon Valley or the Central Coast. Central Coast probably has the most bouncing, smaller in size, more variation in price. You can be right on the coast and have an expensive property, or you can be inland along the 101 corridor. Here's the estimated payments, assuming an 80% loan. You can see that San Francisco and the cities and Silicon Valley are very close together up here, followed by the Central Coast, then North Bay being almost as one of the more affordable areas, and the Central Valley being the most affordable area. And you can see sort of the swings here. The swing here is a combination of interest rates and purchase price. But take a note on any of these regions. You come back here to the pandemic, and let's look at Silicon Valley, which has done one of the biggest increases. The payments were about $7,000. Now interest rates have more than doubled, and our monthly mortgage payments only $13,000. Interest rate is not linear with monthly mortgage payment, and that's because your property tax, your insurance, and even your PI payment doesn't go up linearly with interest rates. As your interest rate climbs, you pay less and less principal and more interest each month. Here are the raw numbers for the 5 regions. You can pick the individual region. I also have the 9 Bay Area counties on here. I didn't talk about that, but a lot of media focuses on that. So it's on here for those that want to look at it, and you pick whatever metric it is that you find most valuable. And with that, I'm open for any questions, not seeing any unmuted mics. Have a great week. Take care. Bye for now.